Hi and welcome to DeepDive's YouTube channel. We're happy you joined us again, and this is I Think I Love My Job. If you are new and you don't know me, I am Kalifa Oliver, the resident expert here at DeepDive on all things employee experience. And thank you for joining me today for part 2 of Continuous Listening Programs. This session will be less intense, less information, but information that I think is important to share. It is really looking at tips and tricks to make sure that you can build a successful continuous listening program. A lot of what you're going to hear in today's session is not new, especially if you looked at the session we've had about how to build surveys and the important parts of surveys and key things to remember about surveys. Because remember, a lot of times your listening program is built of a lot of proactive survey measurements. Of course, this is my favorite rule. I tell it all the time that when you're building any tool within a continuous listening program, remember to know thy audience. Remember, somebody who's walking in the door is not the same person as the person exiting. It's not necessarily the same person as somebody who's been there 3 years, who's also not the same as somebody who's been there 10 years. So when you are seriously thinking about who you're going to be assessing and who you're going to be asking these questions to, be very, very, very careful in how you design the tool. Once again, as I have said many, many times, there are always two people who are super important in designing any survey or assessment that will be within your continuous listening program. It will always be the person who you are focused on, your respondent who should take your tool, take your assessment, and the other person is always the analyst. You will find there are a lot of software tools out there that you can build a survey on, a lot of platforms, but in many cases what I've found is they either focus on the UX for the respondent or the UX for the analyst. And so you have got to really think about your talents and your goals when trying to choose what type of platform you need, if you need to build an internal platform, what type of vendor to use. So again, we'll talk about that in another session about how do you make some of these decisions. This is really, 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 really critical. Do not build any tool or measure with a preconceived notion of what the result is going to be, because what you're doing is nicely baking in your own biases, and so you're never really going to get good data. You're building in bad data already, and so you really, really, really want to be careful not to do that. Always, always, always start designing any tool within a continuous listening program with clear strategic goals. One of the reasons I bring this up is you'll find when a lot of companies invest in continuous listening or even parts of continuous listening, even be it through just an annual survey, a lot of times leaders, they're human and they have this preconceived notion as to what they're going to find. And I've even found with my background and in some consulting I have done that it is very difficult to get a leader to really see what the data is saying. They will tell you you've asked a bad question, or they will ask you to ask a very specific question that in many cases might be leading. You want to go in with a clean slate approach because you want to find out real reactions, you want to find out real things about your organization and your organizational employees so that your leadership is empowered to make the best decision they can with the data they have. And sometimes that's in spite of the leader themselves, but you can find a balance to ensure that you are truly, truly, truly using the best approach for the best opportunity to collect the best data. Otherwise, you have garbage in, garbage out. I've said this and I'll say it again, and I'll go to the mountaintop and I'll scream it there. Do not start or embark on any continuous listening journey if you do not have concrete plans to act on the data that you collect. Do not make your continuous listening program a passive exercise in survey data collection. It will not work, it will be useless, and it will not be helpful. And it's a waste of everybody's time, money, and energy. And in many cases, a lot of talent is being wasted. And again, it's not survey fatigue, it's inaction fatigue. The less you act, the less responses you get, the more likely your program will fail. Because I've run into this a lot, I say this a lot now. Focus on people who took your survey. Focus on the respondents. Don't focus on the ones that got away. Do not focus on the ones who did not take your survey. You do not know why they didn't take your survey. Do not try to assign reasons why they did not take your survey. If your response rate is much lower than expected, focus on the people who took your survey and what they're saying, because clues as to why other people didn't take it might be in there. You just cannot assign that to them. If you are super worried about it, again, I'm going to tell you this. If this is an identified survey, then find people who did not take your survey and do research, or do additional research in general, but do not spend your time and energy on those who did not take the survey. If you do that, you are creating a lot of mess in your data, and really all it is just noise. It's not going to help you. This is something you may not hear a lot from people who are knee-deep and waist-deep in data, because often we overlook it, and for a lot of people it's just not in our training. But my experience within organizations, in academia, and with all my consulting is, do not underestimate the power of good data visualization. You want to story tell that data. You want to make sure to walk into the room with the leaders and tell that story of what that data is saying. You want to tell the story of your employees. You want to tell the story of the organization. And that often is well done when it is backed up by not just charts and graphs, but iconography. You really want to make sure that you paint that picture as concretely and as distinctly in the heads of your decision makers. So when you're building a program, invest in the right tools to do that, and invest in the right talent to help you be the best at writing these reports. Remember, a lot of times that data is complex and it's often intimidating. That is just the truth. And there are a lot of people, especially leaders, who will not want to tell you or admit that they don't really understand all the technical stuff they say. And truly, they just want you to tell them, what do I do? What is the saying? What do I do? And when you come in trying to drone on and on and on and on about p-values, etc., they don't care, right? What they want to know is, cut all of that, get down to the baseline, tell me what's going on, what is the story here, what do I need to do? So the rule, Kalifa's personal rule that I give anybody who works within this field, who does continuous listening, who works with surveys, who works with this type of data, is when you look at the data, when you're evaluating the data, when you're doing your analysis, and when you're writing your reports, would grandma understand this? And it don't have to be your grandma, any grandma. Will they understand it? Or will they give you that look? If you think they'll give you that look, write it over. Because Einstein once said, and I live by this, if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it. And if you don't understand it, you're not going to be able to relay that well to the audience that you need to. So that's it for today's session about continuous listening. You have some tips to build a really good and sound listening program. I hope this was helpful. I hope if you are in the process of trying to build one or understand how to build one, this information is extremely helpful to you. If you have any thoughts or ideas or topics, please leave them in the comments. I am always happy to hear them. Don't forget, if you like what you've seen and heard today, please subscribe. And don't forget, there is always room to have a brilliant experience. See you next time.